The question is x squared plus y squared equals 16, and 36x squared minus 9y squared equals 324. The instructions tell us to solve the nonlinear system of equations for real solutions. So we've done these kind of problems before, but we are going to now add these squares here. As you can see, our x's and our y's are squared. So it just adds a slight bit of complication to it, but still very solvable. We are going to use the elimination or the addition method on these. So the first thing we want to do is number our equations. We have equation number 1 and equation number 2. And because we're using elimination, we want to look here and see that if we multiplied equation 1 by 9, we could add it to equation 2 and we could eliminate our y variable. So let's go ahead and do that. That will give us, if we multiply equation 1 by 9, that will give us 9x squared plus 9y squared equals, it's 144, excuse me. 16 times 9 is 144. If we add those two together, that gives us 45x squared. The y variable cancels out. 9y squared minus 9y squared cancels out. And then 324 plus 144 gives us 468. And then, of course, we still want to solve for x. So we'd want to divide both sides by 45, and when we do, we get x squared equals 52 over 5. Of course, that's after we simplify. So we still have an x squared here that we are solving for, but we still need to solve for x. So as we remember, we want to do the square root of both sides, and when we do that, we get x equals plus or minus. In the end, it's going to be the square root of 52 over 5, right? Because we just did a square root to both sides. Well, we can never have a square root in the denominator, because what this really is the square root of 52 over the square root of 5. So we have to find a way to eliminate the square root in the denominator, and the way we do that is we just multiply the denominator by itself. So now we have the square root of 5 times the square root of 5, but whatever we do to the denominator, we always have to do to the numerator, so we're also going to multiply the numerator by the square root of 5. Now the square root of 5 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 25, and the square root of 52 times the square root of 5 is the square root of 260. These are, of course, still plus or minus here. Now the square root of 25 is 5, so we did what we wanted to do. We got the square root out of the denominator. And the square root of 260 is actually the square root of 4 times the square root of 65. Still plus or minus here. Square root of 4 is 2. Square root of 65, there's nothing we can do there. And that's all over 5. Still plus or minus. So we have just found out and discovered and solved for the fact that x, the square root, x squared equals 52 over 5. When we solve for x, we get plus or minus 2 square root 65 all over 5. Okay, so now we're going to take that number, which we really have two answers here, right? We have 2 square root 65 over 5 and negative 2 square root 65 over 5. Now we want to take the positive 2 square root 65 over 5 and plug it back into equation number 1. And that will give us our y. We can solve for y. So let's back into this. If we do 2 square root 65 over 5. Remember, we're plugging it into equation 1, so x has to be squared there, plus y squared equals 16. Now, if x is 2 square root 65 over 5, we have to square it. We already know that x squared equals 52 over 5, so we're immediately going to move into 52 over 5 plus y squared equals 16. I'm going to move back up here and carry on with this problem. Now we have y squared equals 16 minus 52 over 5. And that gives us y squared equals 28 over 5. Now once again we have to do exactly what we did for x. So we have to square root both sides. So y equals, you're going to follow the same pattern you did here. And what you're going to get is 2 square root 35 over 5. And of course that's going to be plus or minus. And what we did here to get from here to here is exactly the steps we did here, only with these numbers, with the x. Okay, we've now solved for our x, and we've now solved for our y. So the way we put this together is that we match each of the x values with each of the y values. So there's actually a total of 4 answers. So I'm going to try to write that here on this piece of paper. So what we have here is 2 square root 65 over 5 and 2 square root 35 over 5. And that's our first answer. Our second answer is 2 square root 65 over 5, negative 2 square root 35 over 5. That's our second answer. Then our third answer is negative 2 square root 65 over 5 and 2 square root 35 over 5. And last but not least, we have negative 2 square root 65 over 5 and negative 2 square root 35 over 5. Those are all of our xy values and our xy answers, and that is the answer.